Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, September 3rd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Western Michigan game is in 4 days. The game against Michigan in 88 days. And I know what you're thinking. I'm tired of college sports being just the same over and over. It's the same thing every month, every year. Why can't college sports finally make a change? Well, great news, friends. After years and years of stagnation and everything being the same, checks notes. No, turns out everything has changed. Well, good news, everything may be changing again in college sports. A new reporting out of Ross Dellinger from Yahoo says there could be big changes coming to college football, but as other sports as well, as the definition of amateurism continues to change. Some other things could be a new signing model, could be the change to the national letter of intent, or potentially the elimination of the national letter of intent. Going to bring in Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, this all feels like everything in college sports right now is just sort of fallouts from various court losses, the House case and other stuff. This feels like the NCAA probably taking the next steps to maybe try and get ahead of, future court losses.
The thing you just said is crazy. The NCAA trying to get ahead of something, and give them credit for finally catching up to what they should be doing, but or just trying to outpace the laws coming their way. So yeah, adding the 5 years and the different aspects of the common sense that we're trending towards, and being like, okay, let's stop dragging our feet. Let's stop being the stone wall in front of everybody. I'm looking at these rule proposals and the things that they've done over the years, and it's like, it wasn't done recently. It wasn't that long ago where any of these things would just be like, no. And we still just talk about 2006, Texas being kind of getting in trouble or trying to be punished for having too many pages in their media guide. Now there are no more media guides. Like, we've come a long way, Tom. We don't print out paper anymore because, we're conscious about that. But back then it's like, it's a recruiting advantage if you print out too much paper and your media guide. So like, they would create a media guide and then also a record book that would save them pages in the media guide. So it's like, this is what the NCAA was concerned about rather than everything they're dealing with now. So yes. And cream cheese for all.
Yeah, there were, and he's not kidding. There were rules about what constituted permissible foods, and you could have bagels, but you couldn't have cream cheese for the bagels because that would constitute something different. And this was what the NCAA was worried about at a time when you could just sort of start to see the cracks forming in the foundations all around them. Like, this building might have some structural issues. Like, hey, but let's get back to that cream cheese. All right. So they are now past cream cheese. They've set all that in the past. There are a number of potential changes coming. The first one you mentioned real briefly there, the fifth year right now in football and wrestling, athletes are permitted to appear in a certain number of games. So college football players, for example, can appear in 4 regular season games and still take a redshirt year. That, as soon as it went into effect, just felt like an extremely common sense thing. Where good, you can play a little bit, but you're without burning a year, but you can participate a little bit. You can feel a little bit more like a team. Probably some stuff to learn from. Now it sounds, Tony, like that could be coming to other sports, potentially every other sport as well.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense. Like, why would you permit it in football and wrestling and not permit it everywhere else? And I should maybe ask Jake Diebler about this next time we talk to him. But like, for the basketball coaches, how angry does it make you? Did it make you that football could have a guy playing 4 games and 4 regular season games and then up to 5 postseason games, and still, you're talking about let him play half the season and not affect his eligibility? Where is the fairness in that? So it makes sense to go ahead and allow that in other sports. And it sounds like, I don't know who would be against that, other than maybe the administrators that don't want to pay for that 5th year, which there are some. But I did think it was interesting that there's a national network that aggregated Ross Dellinger's piece that we're talking about with this report. And it said the NCAA is considering adding a 5th year of eligibility in all sports while keeping their redshirt. So I quote tweeted that with 5 years of Jeremiah Smith ? And then I did have people tell me he's not going to be here beyond 3 years. So no 5 years. This is just an adoption of the ongoing football redshirt rule.
this is why that Twitter gives you the thing where when you quote tweet something, it says, do you want to read the article first? Tony, this is why that's there. You are the cautionary tale for that.
That's why they have community notes.
But that's the only reason, Tony. The only reason why Jeremiah Smith will not be at Ohio State for 5 years. All right, next up, it says the article, other notable changes include what the documents describe as a, quote, new signing model with the elimination of the national letter of intent. And this is one of these things where there's not a ton of detail in there about what this would look like. You're still going to end up signing stuff, but it's not exactly clear when that would happen or what that would look like.
Yeah, and that's my biggest question, because if you open up, say, this new signing model, players can sign, but they can't sign until October 30th. Then October 30th becomes the new signing date, and it's just you're signing different things. You're signing different paperwork. You're signing the aid agreement. You're signing the ability for Ohio State to start providing financial benefits, whether that's part of the NIL stuff or whatever this eventually becomes. So, like, when is this? When is it? I would assume you can't do it before your senior year, but like, do they wait until after the senior year, or would coaches rather get it done, locked in, so that there are no flips, even though you can still transfer willy-nilly, but once you're kind of locked in, you're more apt to stay. And do coaches want this to be done sooner? Do they want it to be done later so that they have opportunities to watch seniors? Like, I know Urban Meyer hated the early signing day because it limited what they could do for Ohio seniors, because they didn't get enough chance to look at them and then talk to them afterwards, and maybe from December to February really recruit some of these late bloomers. So if some of these late bloomers are choosing to sign earlier, then again, you've got some schools missing out. So I would just like to know, when does this happen? And then I would have a more thorough thought on it. But national letter of intent, like the letter of intent has never been necessary in terms of you don't need to sign one to go to that school.
Yeah, that was always something where there were people who would not sign their letter of intent, and you could still enroll. That is a thing that has happened in the past. It was just a way to lock it in. It was more protection on the player's end to a certain degree. If you are a good enough player that you were not worried about it, you didn't have to do it if you weren't 100% sure you wanted to end up at a school. So that's one change. There was a sort of just brief mention in here, and I thought, I don't know how much we've talked about that on the show before. This is something that came out a few weeks ago, but the NCAA is in process also of considering an elimination of the spring transfer portal window in football. That's one that would be kind of, Tony, going the other direction. A lot of the trends right now in college football and college sports on the whole have been very pro-player, where the players have more rights. The players have more opportunities to make money on the name, image, and likeness. They have more opportunity to move between schools. They're not locked in the way that they used to be. That has sort of been the general trend in a lot of areas of college sports. This would be kind of going the other direction. I don't know how likely I think it is that this will be to go through, or how well received it will be. I'm sure it'll be well received from coaches. I don't know how much players are going to love the idea that you have to transfer after the season in this one window, and if you don't, well, then you're stuck for another year.
Well, and I think what you'll see is a bunch of people, if I'm thinking about it, then I'm just going to do it. If there's no spring window, because I'm thinking about it now, but you know what? Let me go through spring and see how it goes. I'll use the time from December to April to make my decision. And now those players are going to have to do it in that 30-day window or whatever. But I do think that's enough time. I think I would love to see this happen, because I've seen Tim Albin, Ohio University's head coach. I think seen interviews where they lost 4 or 5 or 6 starters to the portal after spring. So, like, once you get through that winter portal, you should just be able to build your team. And you think you're building your team, you're putting all this effort into it. You think you've got your lineup set, and then 4 starters are like, "We'll see ya." Like, that's not fair to that football team. It's not fair to those teammates. So I think one window is fine, but you're right. This is going backwards, but it's because they went so far forwards this may be just correcting something, which there's going to have to be a lot of correction for all of these things that have been opened up in terms of just what is the happy medium. And you do have to find a happy medium. And they're not saying you can't transfer, but this is the window where you can get into the portal. And I wonder how players and their agents and their families will feel about it. But I do think one is enough, but you're going to see more people in there now because it's like, well, there's no harm because I can always come back.
Yeah, you have seen guys in the past leave and then come back. We saw that with Bryson Rogers at Ohio State. He went in the portal, ended up coming back, and then had a catch in the first game against Akron. So yes, it is possible to enter the portal and then come back afterwards. One thing that has not been made clear here is what are the exceptions? They have laid out exceptions in the past for if your head coach leaves, there's a 30-day window that opens up. So you would assume that would remain the same. If your team gets a multi-year postseason ban, is that something that would open a transfer? It would open up a transfer portal window, or is that not be an exception? So that's all still being laid out. These are all still just proposals, just to remind you. So this is not anything that's super imminent to happen, and there's still some details to be ironed out, or at least to be publicly revealed. So we will keep an eye on all that. The last interesting thing here was there's potentially a change, and this is a very pro-athlete change, again, kind of going the same direction in a lot of other things. Before college enrollment, there is a proposed change to permit athletes to receive payment exceeding their expenses for participation in an athletics event to retain their Division I and eligibility. So you could potentially get prize money for something, for participating in something and still be considered an amateur or still be considered allowed to play in college. This is one where, again, I think this is potentially a bigger thing than it seems on its face, because that might change some of the models for pre-college athletics, where you might see more prize money in some of those things, if that then is an allowable thing where you could get prize money somewhere and then also play in college. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but it might be a new thing.
When I read that, I'm thinking large purses for 7-on-7 tournaments, something like that, and televise them, because TV needs all of the inventory that it can get. And if you get some sponsors, you can get some prize money in there, you get even more people involved, and it just kind of snowballs. I was also thinking, now people can get prize money for fishing contests and noodling there in Oklahoma, all kinds of benefits. But remember, like Jeremy Bloom, the Colorado State skier and football player, couldn't earn endorsements. I don't know, is this 30 years ago? Is this 25 years ago? He was
a Colorado, not Colorado State, Colorado Buffaloes wide receiver. And that was in I think the 90s or early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like things are making more sense because, while you can't, back then it was anybody could endorse him. And now you're going to draw him to a school or to anybody else to a school. And now it's like, oh, we can do that now, but don't worry, none of it is enticing. There's no enticements. This is just rewarding players and giving them the free reign to market their names and identities. So I think this makes sense. I am interested to see what comes from it, because anytime you create an opportunity for athletes to make money, there are other businessmen who are like, hey, I could make money from this. Let's see what we can do here.
Finally, some money in AAU basketball. Oh boy, how that will change yes. This is the pro athlete side of my brain is going, this is fantastic. And the person who is around youth sports a lot is kind of going, I don't know. We'll see what this does. Tony, it might make youth hockey parents crazy. I don't know. Who could say? Can you imagine such a thing? Youth hockey parents being crazy, or youth baseball parents being crazy, or any other youth sport you'd like to see? Yeah, it is definitely going to be a potentially, if it goes through, a significant change for college sports, along with all this other stuff that we talked about. So we will be talking about this on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'll be talking about a lot of other stuff there this week as well. Tony and I just recorded a Michigan Monday podcast for the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed, talking about the Wolverines' season opening win over Fresno State and their massive game coming up this weekend against the University of Texas Longhorns up in the Big House. Buckeyes facing Western Michigan Saturday night in the Horseshoe. We'll be there for that one as well, because that's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting, our whole team of X's and O's gurus there at BuckeyeHuddle.com to make you a smarter football fan. We hope to see you there. We hope to see you on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Should have a lot of content there this week as well, as we start diving into college football season for real. Finally here. You waited all year for it. It is finally here. Already getting some fun upsets, some exciting games, many more to come. It should be a really fun fall for you on youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle and BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.